Thank you for waking me up. And welcome home to the Monte Vista Unitarian Universalist congregation. We gather today to celebrate the end of the COVID-19 national emergency. But we will remain diligent because the virus is still active. Today is also Orthodox Easter. Christos Voskres. Vistinu Voskres. Please silence your personal electronic devices. Please read the weekly community connections that arrive each Thursday electronically. Taco Tuesday is an online gathering to share what's happening. The link goes out on Tuesdays. It's also in the announcements. Please drop by. It's half of our UU conversation. If you bring your own coffee, you can have our communion. After service today, the final session on the revision of the UUA bylaws, Article 2, will occur here in the sanctuary. Everybody's invited, even if you've not attended any of the previous sessions. This is the final where we really get to dig in and discuss what the changes are. Next Saturday and Sunday, Reverend Maggie and Reverend Ellen will be attending the PSW Service Area Assembly in San Luis Obispo. They'll be gone one night. They'll be leaving Saturday. They'll be gone Sunday, but we'll cover it. The monthly gathering around grief support group meets in the Founders Room at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. The pledge team needs your help with setup and cleanup on Sunday, April 30th, as we have our first potluck in over 3 years. Contact Debbie if you're willing and able to help. Okay. Set up on the 29th. Clean up on the 30th. And as a reminder, Cain's Cupboard, our animal ministry, is still operating. The cupboard is now located in the hallway near the Founders Room. So drop by and pick up something if you need it for your animal, or make a donation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, and Sophie is rocking her new sweater from Cain's Cupboard. I thought I would show that off to you, and also to our folks on Zoom. We welcome you who are joining us online. It is wonderful, wonderful to be here together today. Thank you all. To open our service, we ring the bowl 3 times. Tell ahead, Sophie, a while I can flop her around like a newborn. Huh? We ring the bowl once for those who have come before. The Tongva peoples and other indigenous groups that lived here on this land before us and originally called it home. For our ancestors and our founding members. We ring it once for those of us here and now. Our members, our friends, our staff, our visitors, and other UUs around the world. And we ring it once for those who will come. For all who will walk beside us on this unfolding path. Our opening song today is in our Singing the Living Tradition hymnal, number 361, but we'll also have the lyric on the screen. But unless you like to follow the music, please open your hymnal to 361 and stand as you're comfortable, and we're going to sing together, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Only the first 3 verses. I'd like to invite Jack Weidman up, please. He will be lighting our chalice today. And I invite all of you to take part in our chalice lighting words. It's done as a responsorial reading with the congregational voice, which is in your order of service, is "We are not alone." Thank you. We are not alone. We are this flame, ancient as the stars, new as a vulnerable spark. We are this chalice, rimmed by the spiral dance of searching. We are the light soaring, the shadow deepening, the dance between them. We are the heirs of the tribes and their fires, the healers in their circles. We are here. We are here for ourselves. We are here for each other, and we are not alone. And thus do we covenant. I invite you to follow the words that are in your order of service there. And Jaryus may have them. He does. Let's read this together and do our covenant. Then we'll stand for Spirit of Life right after. We affirm that love is the greatest purpose of this congregation. The search for truth is our constant star, and service is our prayer. We pledge our hearts, minds, and hands to challenge injustice with courage, to find hope in times of fear, and to live out our Unitarian, Universalist values every day as a beloved community. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all that is sacred in life. Thank you. And please stand as you're comfortable for Spirit of Life.
Rise in the sea.
seated. Everyone but Robert. For our wisdom tale today, we have a beautiful, very special ritual that will be presented. It's called Layers of Oppression.
And if Lily and Donovan can join us up here too, they're going to help me out. What is in this vase up here in the front? It's earth and soil and dirt. And what does it mean to have rich and healthy soil? For thousands of years, Native Americans have lived on this land, and the Europeans came. The Europeans thought that they had a better way of doing things, and when they came to the Americas, they brought these different ways. First, they came and they took the land, and they became owners of the land rather than sharing it. They controlled the land and also controlled the native peoples. And many of them died or were hurt or were forced to live in ways that were very different from what they were used to. There is a really big word that is used to describe the controlling of land and the people who live on it. That word is colonization. They added colonization to the soil. So can you pick a color to represent colonization and dump it in? Okay. There you go. These Europeans also brought a new way of being together. This way of being together would not allow women to own property, to have jobs, or to vote. This way of being together is called patriarchy. Patriarchy is a fancy word for the idea that men are better than women. They added the energies of patriarchy to the soil. Can you choose a color for patriarchy, Donovan? And just dump some of it. Don't dump the whole thing because we're going to run out of space. About half. I probably shouldn't have put so much in the cups. Pick a color and about half of it. Put in there. There you go. That's good. Then the Europeans saw that while the land was rich and it grew much food, they could grow richer themselves by forcing others to work for them. So the Europeans brought slavery to America. They forced people from Africa onto ships and brought them across the ocean. They made them work the land without money. They added slavery onto the soil. Can you choose a color, Donovan, and dump some in? Just a little bit like you did the yellow? Any color you want. Okay. Good job. Over time and throughout history, other things were added to the soil as well. These other things include not letting people love who they want, pouring some sand, not helping people who are disabled, pouring a different color. Making it difficult for poor people to earn money. Making voting difficult for poor people and for people of color. Putting people in prisons for small problems. You can do a little bit more than that. There you go. Polluting our soil, our air, and our water. The words that we use for all of these things is supremacy. That is a big word that means one group of people believe that they are better and that they can control more and control many different things in our world. They make it difficult for people who are not like them to live the way that they would like to live. Now, some of these things that were added to the soil were changed over a long period of time. Women are now allowed to vote and hold jobs. There is no longer slavery. But these things still exist, just in different ways. In many states, women still cannot do what they want with their bodies. Slavery has taken on newer forms, and people are still paid poorly in this country. Rich people are getting richer, and poor people are getting poorer. All of these things are still in our soil. What can we do to get to the good soil? This is hard work. It is hard because the sand that represents oppression is everywhere, and it gets into everything. But if we want to be healthy and live in a world where everyone is cared for, we need to do this work of removing the sand. The best way to do this is to do it together so that we can plant seeds of love and justice in the world. Thank you, everybody. And now you can sing us to our class if Jaryus can put the words up on the screen.
Now I'd like to invite Carissa Moore up, our treasurer. It is time for time with the treasurer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so our pledge totals as of Monday the 10th, we have 36 pledge units, 46 members and friends, $79,580 pledged. So give yourselves a big hand for that. To put this into perspective, we are only $7,810 short of what was pledged during last year's pledge drive. So we got 2 weeks to go. Remember, if you are a board member, committee member, or a committee chair, or you are planning to be one next year, you need to have a current pledge card on file for the new fiscal year. Otherwise, somebody will track you down and call you out on it. So let's just avoid that. Committee chairs, you have 2 more weeks for your budget request forms. If you're holding back because everything costs more and you don't want to submit a higher request, we're aware of that. The Finance Committee is well aware that everything costs more. So get the forms in, please, so we can get started on that. Okay, now there was a bit of a mix-up with the order of service. So right now I am going to invite Julie Steinbach up to tell us why she pledges to MVUUC.
Good morning. When I was a little girl in Mayville, Wisconsin, as members of St. John's Lutheran Church, every January, my family received 3 boxes of 52 envelopes for the weekly collection. One for my parents, approximately this size, and one for each of the children, my sister and me, a smaller version, approximately this size. The distinctive feature of both versions was that each envelope was divided vertically down the center, thus creating 2 pockets, marked home and missions. As a child in the 50s, my weekly allowance was 25 cents. Every Sunday, I put a nickel in the home pocket and a penny in the missions pocket, which I then placed in the collection plate. My family went to church every Sunday. Whatever the initial instructions from my parents, which I don't remember, it was not something I thought about. It was something I simply did, as did my sister. No discussion. In looking back on this childhood habit, I realized it was excellent training in good stewardship. The other aspect of this family story, however, reveals the dark side of being raised in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. No discussion. During my 8 years at St. John's Lutheran School, a foundational textbook was Luther's Small Catechism, in which a key line was indoctrinated even more than many Bible passages. This is most certainly true. The context was Martin Luther's explanation of each section of the Apostles' Creed, the belief statement that we stood up and said every Sunday in church. Essentially, I believe in God the Father Almighty, then I believe in Jesus Christ, and then I believe in the Holy Spirit. In the Catechism, Martin Luther posed the question after each section, what does this mean? And then provided his long, wordy answer, followed by, this is most certainly true. No discussion, no questions, no questioning. This theme surrounded me until college, also a Lutheran college, Valparaiso University in Indiana, which actually turned out to be the beginning of the end of my relationship with the Lutheran Church. At that time, Valpo required 10 units of theology courses of all students, which were 2-unit courses. And I was immediately learned that theology classes are not religion classes, they're not catechism classes, they're essentially philosophy classes. And that it's okay to ask questions, to discuss, to think for yourself. What a concept. All of which underscored my next several decades of freedom to explore, resonating for the longest, most strongly with women's circles and goddess spirituality, but definitely not church per se, until I landed here at Monte Vista, though not initially. Through a variety of personal and professional connections, I visited several times in the 70s and the 80s, but not until a third period did I discover that in the intervening years, apparently I'd become a UU and didn't know it. I immediately felt at home. That was in early 1999, 24 years ago. The most memorable experience of my early years here was participating in the adult RE class led by Beth Johnson and Amy Randall, a UU curriculum called Building Your Own Theology. Again, what a concept. Alan Worley was in that class, as was Corey Boss, leading to a friendship I still treasure and savor, even though Corey and Shannon moved to Washington several years ago, which is just one example of a major gift of MVUUC engagement. The number of deep and nurturing friendships initiated, built, and sustained through classes, committees, and meetings, through working, marching, and traveling together to Bentonville Pines, to General Assembly, to district assemblies, to marches for peace, for women's rights, for gay rights, to auction field trips, and the Hollywood Bowl, to our partner church in the Philippines. In recent years, I've not been as involved here at Monte Vista as in earlier times. I'm seeing people here I don't even know or haven't even met. And I'm reminded of a moment once when I stood up here as board president and was struck by a wave of appreciation, actually awe, as I looked out and saw all these characters with such character. I see that again today. Which is the same sense I get when following the personal passion that takes me elsewhere, my love of travel, which is quite inspired actually by a UU world map. not only with my engagement with IWC, International Women's Convocation, and the UN, but also with individual explorations such as this winter's visit to the Lisbon site of the origin of our chalice symbol, and the Spanish village birthplace of Michael Servetus, our Unitarian forebear, burned at the stake in 1568 for his staunch anti-Trinitarian stance. Speaking of lives endangered, 2 Unitarian families in Rwanda had to escape their homeland 4 years ago due to their progressive positions against that dictatorship. I first met them in 2016 at the International Council of Unitarians, Universalists in the Netherlands. Ever since their escape, they've been on refugee status in Uganda, where I bought this shirt when with them 4 years ago. For over 4 years now, they've been awaiting emigration to Canada, where the National Unitarian Council has an impressive track record of sponsoring refugees from war-torn countries. My friends are expected at the Halifax Unitarian Church this year. When they finally get there, I'm hoping to be part of their welcome in Nova Scotia. Regardless of where I go in this wide UU world, Monte Vista is my home base. It was fun to hear Alan say welcome home this morning. Our own sports king, Mark Moninger, knows I'm not a sports fan. But what's a metaphor? I pledge because Monte Vista is my home. Just as I budget personally for food and shelter, I also do so for other provisions for body and mind and spirit. Maddie Scully spoke about Monte Vista as home is where the heart is. For me, home is where the spirit is. The spirit of the shared journey, as Terry McGuire gifted us last week with Bill Sinkford's words. At the beginning of pledge season this year, I increased my pledge. Now, after being newly inspired by my compadres' testimonials, I've decided to increase it again in honor and memory of Maddie Scully. When Emily Mason was treasurer at least a decade ago, I learned about the possibility of paying my pledge by monthly bank withdrawal. Now I use PayPal. It's even easier than putting the nickel and penny in that childhood envelope. I've been home here at Monte Vista MVUUC almost a quarter century, about a third of my life of these 76 years. I pledge because I want to ensure that 76 years from now, the UU flag of free questing and questioning will still soar over this thriving, inspiring activist community of character, of all these characters with character. I pledge for this home, for us now, and for our future spirit mates. Each of us has our own UU creation story. Whatever our past, whatever our path, I am so glad to share and support this home with you. This is most certainly true.
Thank you, Julie. I feel like I want to say, and our closing song will be, but no, we have more. We have more. For me, preparing offering messages during Pledge Drive, which will end with our potluck on the 30th, so let's not forget that. It gives me a time to deeply consider all of the gifts that we each bring, the many examples of the helpful ways that we offer our time, our talent, and our treasure that keep our community sustainable. It is always my intention to avoid talking about finances too often, and yet it's also irresponsible of me to ignore the importance of understanding how essential our pledges and offerings are to the well-being of our congregation. We hold that balance in these weeks where we gather our pledges for next year as the Finance Committee and our treasurer work to create our new operating budget that will kick in July 1st and reflect who we are and who we want to be in the future. Our pledges of financial commitment ensure that we continue to tend to the spiritual development of this community and strengthen our capacities to share our values of love, compassion, and justice in the wider world. We are discovering things about our campus that need immediate tending, things that have been there, perhaps under the surface, but coming forward to grab our full attention now, and we continue to find our way toward a healthier future. Fixing our floor tiles, replacing our roof, fixing the tree roots. There's so much. It's unending. It's unending. But by taking time to gather our offering each Sunday, we're embracing a ritual that says our giving is an essential part of our fiscal and spiritual well-being. If your offering today is dedicated to the pledge for the current year or to support our Kalapayan partner church or one of our other ministries like Kane's Cupboard, as Alan mentioned, please be certain to state that in the memo of your check, or if you use cash, please put it into an envelope and write how you want it dedicated. It's very helpful. Thank you. And while we listen to Lily's beautiful offertory, I invite those in the sanctuary to please come forward now and leave your financial gifts to the congregation and your non-perishable gifts for the Beta Center and Inland Valley Hope Partners in the larger basket on our altar. And it is with the deepest of gratitude for the many gifts of this community that the offering will now be given and received. It is our time to share our joys and sorrows, the delights and disappointments in our lives. I do have an update on Maddie's brother Michael that had cancer surgery this week on Wednesday. The surgery went very long. I'm sorry, Steve, it's going to bring this back for you, but his surgery went 5 hours. They didn't expect it, but it went very well, and there was very little intervention on the nerves. So wherever the site was, I'm sorry, it was somewhere on his face, but he came through okay. And after a little recovery time, we'll start to work on Maddie's memorial service, but not quite yet. A joy is that we have been invited by the Pacific Unitarian Church at Rancho Palos Verdes to join them in their date for Camp de Benneville Pines. They have one of the best weekends reserved for them every year. They get June 9 through 11, so the weather will be warm and beautiful. So it's now called the PUC and MVUUC Camp Weekend, Camp Retreat, June 9 through 11. Can I just have like a show of hands for how many think they might attend that? Yeah, great, even if just part of it. Beautiful, thank you, thank you. I do have a paper that the dean sent me. In fact, rather than having to dean for ourselves, for our own congregation, the Kistners, Andy and Janet, offered to be our dean for the whole camp. So we won't have to be doing, as Monte Vista, we won't have to be doing any work this year. So we will just sign up and attend and be carried along into this beautiful setting and have a wonderful weekend up at camp with the PUC. But I have some information if you need it today or want it today. Otherwise, we'll have it in our community connections as a link. Okay, that'll be coming up soon. Some more joys. I love this. We have lots of joys today. One that comes from Alan and Letha. This afternoon, we will meet for the first time our newest granddaughter. Her name is Venice, and they're going to celebrate her 18th birthday. How does that happen? Alan writes, isn't DNA and ancestry wonderful? So they have a new granddaughter that they didn't realize. They're going to meet her today. That's so beautiful. I hope she can come visit us sometime. And this one comes from Debbie Skirdo. Debbie writes, this beautiful weather brings me joy. The growing number of folks at Sunday services brings me great joy too. Can tell she's chair of membership, right? Very good, Debbie. Thank you. She writes, please keep coming and helping MVUUC grow and flourish. Yes. Join us because we are growing and flourishing, right? I have a time of prayer that I've prepared and a little meditation time that will end with some shared silence, and then we'll have Lily bring us out of the silence, and we'll sing our gentle song for today. It's filled with loving kindness. It's in the Teal hymnal, number 1031, if you want to put your finger there before we start. One thing I ask is the pronouns change. The verse is the same each time we sing it, but the pronouns change from I to you to we as we go through that song. Let's enter a time of prayer. If you can settle in, let your eyes maybe float gently closed. Sit comfortable in your seat. Let's take an engaged breath in, maybe a little deeper, and a little longer exhale. Allow yourself the vision of enjoying a short walk through the forest. Maybe you're alone, or you've planned to meet a friend, or hope to let yourself meet an unseen guide. Imagine moving into a clearing, a sacred grove. Drink in the moment of coming into the clearing with a sense that we have come to a place that we've longed for. Our hearts smile at all that that means, to have that deepest sense of arrival and belonging. No more rushing towards something we seek, not needing any destination beyond where we are right now. Settle in, find a place to rest where there's nowhere we need to go. Here we are in the sacred grove, the good earth beneath us, the trees around us, and the sky above us. We can rest here, seated on this earth, and sense the rootedness of the trees. We've been here so long. They are happy to be right here, and content with where they are, grounded into the earth. We sense them as living beings, teaching us stability and strength as we too ground ourselves in the energy of the earth. We feel Mother Earth holding us, her gravity as her hug, caring for us as she has cared for those trees. We root ourselves into her energies through the bottoms of our feet. Imagine looking up to see the canopy of the trees above us, a few budding leaves ready to burst into fullness. We connect with the bluest of skies above us. We take into our lungs a deep breath filled with all of the energy of the sky. It flows into our beings, energy of the sky meeting the energy of the earth within the center of us. Breathe in, and breathe out. Breathe in the sky and breathe out the earth. Being here and knowing our quest for truth and meaning is made easier by the gift of the calm presence of peace within the grove of our hearts. We know that a better world is possible and coming for all beings. We let that wisdom guide our steps. We let that message be made visible in who we are. path to peace is laid before our feet. As we walk with the great spirit of life to find truth and make meaning. In her USA Today article, Sifting the Gold from Brene Brown's famous TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, journalist Erin Jensen highlighted the links between courage and vulnerability with 5 concepts that comfort us and stretch us enough to feel safe and maybe brave about exposing our true selves to one another. Brown's re-envisioning defines vulnerability as having the courage to show up even when you can't control the outcome. The first of the 5 concepts says vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. Despite what most think, Brown said, vulnerability is not a dark, negative emotion. Vulnerability is our most accurate way to measure courage. She adds, we can measure how brave you are by how you show up and how vulnerable you're willing to be. Number 2, there are many benefits to opening up. Brown asserts vulnerability is the birthplace of things like love and joy. To love is to be vulnerable, to give someone your heart and say, I know this could hurt so bad, but I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to be vulnerable and love you. She added, when we lose our capacity for vulnerability, joy becomes apprehension, and it becomes scary to let ourselves feel deep joy. Number 3, vulnerability opens creativity. No vulnerability, no creativity. No tolerance for failure, no innovation. It's that simple, Brown says. If you're not willing to allow failure, you can't innovate. You're too busy preventing failure to allow openness and creative ideas to come alive. If you're not willing to build a vulnerable culture within your community, you can't create. before. Vulnerability is inescapable. Brown said even those who think they're avoiding being vulnerable are in fact experiencing the emotion. You do vulnerability knowingly, or vulnerability will do you, she says. She explained the importance of openness and exploring how you feel. It is so much easier to cause pain than to feel pain. And when you don't acknowledge your vulnerability, you often end up taking it out on other people. Get to know your inescapable vulnerability, and you will find the capacity to stop taking your stuff out on other people. And number 5, the choice to embrace exposure is easier in the end. Vulnerability is hard and scary, and it feels dangerous, but it's not as hard, scary, or dangerous as getting to the end of our lives and having to ask ourselves, what if I would have shown up? What if I would have said, I love you? Brown told the audience in her TED Talk to show up, to be seen, to answer the call to courage because you're worth it. Every day before your feet hit the floor, be vulnerable enough to say, today I choose courage over comfort. Today I choose to be brave. You are worth being brave. Thank you, thank you. Another joy that I didn't mention has to do with that little, and the folks on Zoom can see it too. There's a little yellow square like hovering behind my shoulder there. See that little yellow square is a note from Brenda. Please do not raise this shade. What happened was the shade that we had delivered to us that we have been using had some horrible wrinkles in the bottom of it. I don't know if anyone had even noticed that, but our tech team was diligent and they replaced it free of charge. So we have our new screen here. It just can't be raised up until later today. But they installed that earlier this week. So that is a joy. The wrinkles were very disturbing for some of us. It really changed. It kind of warped the image a little bit. So this is great. This is really a joy. So sorry about the yellow square. I'll try to block it. No, that's not working. There we go. It was during the fall of 2017, nearly 6 years ago now, and I was serving as the minister of our congregation in the San Fernando Valley that was fondly nicknamed the Onion. When I first heard the phrase, the eighth principle, we were looking at the works of Unitarian Universalist minister Forrest Church at that time, respecting all that he had been through and all that he was brave enough to teach about his journey. Frank Forrester Church IV was the son of a U.S. senator who was serving as minister to the Unitarian Church of All Souls in New York City until late 2006, when he was appointed as their minister of public theology. He was a respected author who wrote about Christianity, Gnosticism, and his own end-of-life experience in his book, Love and Death, published by Beacon Press in 2008, just months before his death from esophageal cancer in 2009 at the young age of only 61 years. Church was in his early 50s when he acknowledged that he was addicted to alcohol and joined Alcoholics Anonymous. As part of his recovery, he developed a 3-part mantra that he said served him well for the remaining years of his life. It consists of 3 statements that he expands on in Love and Death. Want what you have, do what you can, be who you are. And please listen for any whispers of multiculturalism or anti-racism or anti-supremacy in the segments that I'm about to read you. Let's want what we have. Praying for health if we're blessed with health. for friendship, if we're blessed with friends, for family, if we're blessed with family, and for work, if we're blessed with tasks and await our doing. And if our lives are dark, may we remember to want nothing more than the loving affection of those whose hearts are broken by our pain. Let's do what we can, not dream impossible dreams or climb every mountain, but dream one possible dream and climb one splendid mountain, that our life may be blessed with attainable meaning. And let us be who we are, embrace our God-given nature and talents, answer the call that is ours, not another's, thereby enhancing our little world and the greater world we share. The deep dive we took into Forest Church's teaching at that time was something we perceived as a top-notch, responsible search for truth and meaning, especially in the ways that it gave support for the perceptions that we held dear, that our Unitarian Universalist faith was clearly flawless, exemplary, and the epitome of spiritual tradition immemorial. That perception proved to be a valuable anchor to us in the rough seas ahead, as conversation and teaching from our regional and national leadership began to focus on the need to examine and root out the prevalence of white supremacy in our faith. It was earlier that same year, in May of 2017, when the first draft of our 8th principle was formally adopted by the congregation that composed it in Philadelphia. And it was recommended that the UUA, which stands for our Association of All Unitarian Universalist Communities, adopted it at a future General Assembly soon. Language that was new to the congregation was very difficult for them to receive. White supremacy, white centering, racist, were terms that left us often offended and resentful. Expressions of anger might have sounded like, "We don't need this. We're not racist in any way." The reason we're UUs is because we're against racism. I don't feel better than anyone. White supremacy is nonsense. Whose idea is this, and where did the 8th principle come from anyway? Well, from the website 8thprincipleuu.org, which is provided on the back of your order of service at the bottom of the 7 principles, so you can look it up on your own. Please do. The 8th principle came from a feeling that we need something to renew our commitment to this work, and to hold ourselves accountable and fulfill the potential of our existing principles. Paula Cole-Jones from the Joseph Priestley District in the Central East region, their director of racial and social justice, who developed the idea that there are 2 different paradigms in UU Circle. One of adherence to the 7 UU principles, close to need for self-awareness work, and one of a beloved community of deep multiculturalism who is open to brave vulnerability. After working with congregation on these issues for 15 years, she realized that a person can believe they're being a good UU and following the 7 principles without ever thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions on the systemic level. UUs also have a mixed record historically in other areas of racial justice. For example, we had people on both sides of abolitionism, including people like Jefferson, who was a slaveholder, and Unitarians were proponents of eugenics, leading to some of the racial extremes of Nazism and apartheid in South Africa. For people who identify as white, it is too easy to ignore these issues, which is exactly what keeps the system of racism in our society alive and, in fact, worsening right now. We need to be willing to be brave and vulnerable in order to de-center whiteness and other dominant cultures in Unitarian Universalism. Let's talk more soon about what some of those dominant cultural aspects might be. But as we pause and wonder today, we focus our curiosity on the beloved community aspect of our faith. Came up in our leadership meeting yesterday. It is coming into bloom and important for our future of Unitarian Universalism. This comes from the 8th Principle website. It is their definition of what is beloved community. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, abilities, sexual orientation backgrounds come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and in the broader world. Beautiful. And how powerful is the urge to jump for joy that this is who we are. And yes, I see it. We can all see it. It's how we all want to be, and it is how we see ourselves. If you were on a search throughout the 3-county Southern California area for a faith-based community that fit that description, we would check all the boxes and fit that description. And we would win all the stars. But let's be careful too, as we also work to embrace a deeper self-awareness. Let's be careful to do all we can not to repeat the misperceptions that we had of our capacity for racism. Let's be careful not to become puffed up so that we can't seek the work that we still have left to do, to bring about healing, to toil for justice, and to produce an ever-increasing love. The brave work of being brave and vulnerable keepers of the 8th principle are not arrogant enough to say that we've got it licked, or that it's written about us, and not blind enough to believe that we are nowhere near racist, not so closed off from the suffering of the oppressed that we can't cry out against it. We must be brave and vulnerable enough so that we can feel and touch and fight for the broken lives who we can help. Jimmy Grissom has an idea that we're going to bring to the board. Sorry, board. I'm presenting all these things just out of the blue, dumping them on you. It'll be in my minister's report to you. But it's Jimmy's idea that we organize, because she used to walk 5 miles every day to become healthier, a 5-mile walk called the Maddie Scully Walk for transgender people. Can we do that? Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. We're going to do it. As Brene Brown guides us in our reading for today, vulnerability is not weakness. It is our greatest measure of courage. It's the emotion we feel when we're experiencing uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. When we talk about our feelings that reveal our secret shaming, our addictions, and our sore spots from our past traumas. When we're struggling with grief, and we try to act normal because we're treated that way, as if we've recovered. Kathy's nodding. Yeah. and when we want to be there for someone in ways that no one was there for us. But this is what we're called to do. To wake up in the morning and before our feet hit the floor to say to ourselves, today, I want to engage and be actively compassionate to those I will meet. Today, I want to hear my own voice in a way that will help me to learn about how I sound to others. Today, I promise to come out of my perception of self-importance or self-loathing and take the risk to really see, hear, and honor my best self, my favorite self. Coming to see our 8th principle from a brave and a vulnerable view shifts our perspective from one that is easily offended to one who's always open to hearing their own voice and cares deeply about how their words are received. Being brave and vulnerable prevents you from screaming, "I'm not racist," and instead allowing yourself to be curious about how you speak and your reply. Can you say, "Oh no, I'm so sorry, that sounded awful. Can I please take that back?" Those words can be heard around our household now and again. I have said some pretty awful things that just came out of my early programming. I've shared this with some of you, but I feel a nudge to say it now. It was a common phrase in my household to say, "Go ahead, you're free, white, and 21. I said that to George one day. He loves me. He just said, "Really?" So I'm working on opening my own self-awareness, to hear and see my own need to weed out old racism that was programmed as acceptable in my early life. It comes to keep me humble every now and again. Thanks, honey. Being brave and vulnerable gives us the compassion to see where our own missteps have brought harm. And it also helps us to be able to be a loving example to those who we care about, who have deeply ingrained racist perspectives that they're unable to see, or worse, they take pride in them. Speaking of the DNA that Alan was celebrating, many people that I share DNA with are of that mindset. And I love them. But the only way I can impact them is to be different around them and give them options and give them grace and give them love. Over Memorial Day weekend, George and I, brave George, will travel to New York to attend my nephew's wedding, and the opportunities to be a loving example will no doubt be overabundant. My brave and vulnerable 8th principle perspective will get a workout. But I promise to carry it with me and live it with all that I have in me, watching out for the easy way that we try to reconnect with family in ways that contradict our best selves sometimes. We just slip right back into that same mindset and lingo to fit in. But may we all wake up brave, willing to put our vulnerable hearts out there and do all we can to adopt that 8th principle as one of our ethics that we genuinely affirm and promote. It's printed in your order of service. It's our opening thought for today, centering thought. Let's read it together as we close. Before we get to journeying, it starts with, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Thank you. Blessed be. Let's sing our sending song. I invite you to stand and stretch a bit. It's in the teal hymnal, number 1057, Go Lifted Up. May we go lifted up. Jack, if you could come up and extinguish the chalice, we'll read the benediction words together. They're also in your order of service there. This is the message of our faith, to act with passion in the face of injustice. Thank you. And courage in the midst of life's challenges, and to live with the light of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we're together again. Everyone is invited for refreshments and conversation following the postlude.